I'd like to talk about the creative infinite, which is something I've just started saying in conversation whenever we've been talking about AI as a design material, as a creative material. And I think it's important to talk about because I don't think that we've fully grasped what this technology is, what it can do. And I see all around me just a real misunderstanding or lack of imagination about what this thing is and what it can do. And I want to set aside all of the normal conversations around IP, around creative professionals' jobs being displaced, about AI being used by lazy college kids to write their term papers. I want to set all that aside. And instead, I want to focus on the fact that never before in the history of humankind have we had a design medium where anyone really that has access to these tools can input something and get something out. And what you input is really kind of anything, and what you could get out of this is really kind of anything, and that this process can be repeated as many times as needed or wanted, or it could be automated, it could be hooked up to other things where the outputs of one thing become the inputs to another thing, and you just kind of connect the dots forever and ever and ever. And I don't think that we've fully grasped what that means. And that's both a terrifying thing, but I think what I want to focus on here is we have enough of that. And don't get me wrong, I share a lot of the terror and concern around a lot of this. But from a human potential perspective, from a deep belief that everyone in the world has abundant creative potential, and that historically there have been so many limitations to people's ability to create. Over the course of my life, I've seen that bar come way down. PCs, internet, phones, all of that stuff has radically reduced the barrier of entry for people to be creative. But yet still, there's always been a divide of people who can make a website versus the people who can't, the people who can draw and versus the people who can't. A lot of that is invented, right? Those are just stories we tell ourselves. They're not necessarily true, but in many respects, a lot of people don't know how to create. So the fact that we now have a creative material that allows us to utter some words, like my 8-year-old daughter did earlier tonight. She was like, I want to make a video game. And I said, what do you want that video game to be about? And she knows that I love Michael McDonald. I think that he's hilarious as well as talented. And she goes, it should be a game about Michael McDonald, and you are a musician playing with Michael McDonald, and you have to go around a city and gather an audience and then bring them to the show, and then you play a show with Michael McDonald. And he should go to the South Pole and play with penguins. and I said, do you want to make that? And she's like, yeah. And in like 15 minutes, me and my 8-year-old had a game created. It's built in 3JS and runs in the browser, and you walk around the city, and you go to New York City and Japan and Myrtle Beach and ultimately the South Pole to play music with Michael McDonald and bring people to the show. I like That's amazing, and I'm very proud of my daughter for all sorts of reasons. But stepping back, like at no point in human history has it been possible to do that, to just go, let's make a video game and we're going to describe what it is. And it just shows up. And then we get to iterate over it. And we get to say, now I want like this too. We need to add the ability to customize your characters. And so she's just describing what she wants. And then it emerges. It's insane. It's utterly and completely insane. And again, very, very real reasons to be cautious about this, skeptical about this, terrified by this, all good, all valid. But what I do want to focus on here is that we can do whatever we want. We can make whatever we want. We don't have to be limited by the constraints and the models of the, well, that's too hard. And, just the incremental nature of a lot of the work that I'm kind of around, where it just kind of feels like build a better button, right? It's this notion of the adjacent possible is really limited by our own imaginations. And I think that one of the things that I've been really keen on with this has been, how can we use this new technology? How can we use this new design medium, this new creative material, to not just incrementalize things, but really to reinvent and invent brand new things and put different things together that have never been thought to be put together before? And how do we do this in pursuit of a better world, a more beautiful world, a more creative world, a world where more people are participating in making games and making websites and making things, right? How do we take that childlike wonder that all children have and wield it and use it and reconnect with our creative selves and reconnect with our ability to imagine things and to say, wouldn't it be cool if? I don't think that there's ever been a better time in the history of all humankind to have the thoughts, wouldn't it be cool, in your head? Because we now have the ability to say, oh, wouldn't it be cool if there was a website that did da 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 da? Wouldn't it be cool if there was a game that did this? Wouldn't it be cool if like this thing was like this? Wouldn't it be cool if I could just snap my fingers and have this be like this instead of like this? And we have that. And I don't think that we fully understand what we have here. The fact of the matter is these things are just inputs and outputs. And that's not even factoring in the sheer creative arsenal we already have at our disposals, right? When new technologies come along, they don't destroy the old technologies, and instead it has a compounding effect. And because we're talking about a general purpose technology that can take in all of these other inputs and output all of these other outputs, and when we combine them with any sort of other artistic mediums, creative materials, design materials, holy shit, it really just blows the door right off of the hinges and enters us into this thing that I could only describe as the creative infinite, right? The limitations that once prevented us from being able to do the things that are in our heads that we might be able to sort of describe with some words, but could never quite get it out or didn't really know how we'd go about accomplishing that. We're now in a place where I have this idea in my head. I want to make it. Sometimes we don't even know how that would come to life. But we're now in a place where increasingly that doesn't matter as much as it used to. Now, obviously, the more fluency you have in creative materials, be that code, be that design, be that painting, playing music, be that really anything, right? Those gifts, those abilities play to our favor when it comes to reaching for new technologies, right? Just the same way that being able to play piano allows you to wield a synthesizer better than somebody who doesn't know how to play the piano. But again, I keep coming back to this democratization of the creative act, and that is freaking beautiful. We need more people making things, positive things, right? Again, this is the double-edged sword of all of this, is that I'm fully aware that these tools are available to everyone, including some pretty shitty people, people with bad motives, people with bad intentions, and all of this stuff. But again, I want to focus here, for the purposes of this conversation, on all of the people that I know, the scores of people I've talked to that have said, I used to play music, or I can't draw, or I can't paint, or I wouldn't know how to do that. I couldn't do that, right? This is why I'm excited about this opportunity here, provided people can articulate in some way their ideas, their thoughts, to be able to utter some words, then they're able to begin the process of creating. Another thing as I think about this is the ability for people who historically don't fit into a classical sort of model for how people are meant to think, right? You want to call it neurodivergence, you want to talk about it in other ways. When we talk about the ability to just speak in the way that is natural to you, and to have that be translated in the way that you want to get the outcomes you want without having to be interpreted wrong by other people, that's also very liberating, and that opens the door to more people pursuing creative things. The moral of this story here is that we now have this new medium, in addition to our already rich creative tools and technologies, that accepts inputs and spits out outputs. This is a really interesting moment in time, and I'm really trying to grapple with the fact that for the rest of my days on Earth and for my daughter's days, that there's going to be the ability to say, wouldn't it be cool if this existed? And then to bring it into existence with little to no friction. Or as someone who makes things, as someone who enjoys playing with different modalities, with different creative mediums, I don't think I've ever felt more like a kid in a candy shop. I've seen myself go from struggling and frustrated that I never seemed to have enough time to act on the billion ideas in my head, to all of a sudden be just cranking out so many of these ideas that I've wanted to act on for so long. It's a pretty powerful feeling, but I don't really think that in any meaningful way even creative professionals really understand how seismic of a shift this is. And again, there's plenty of good reasons to be worried, but strictly from a creative perspective, the ability to have an idea and hear my daughter's idea and then a few minutes later be playing that idea, that's just bonkers. Utterly and completely bonkers. But yes, we now live in the creative infinite. So the question becomes, what are we going to do with it? What are we going to make? To what end? Make it good. I'm not going to tell you what to make, but make it good.